I'm going to start out with just a little bit of history on our solid waste and how we've evolved over the years. The city of Moscow began exporting their municipal solid waste in 1993. That time, the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency adopted the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Subtitle D regulations, which revised minimum federal criteria that included non-hazardous landfill restrictions, facility design and operating requirements, groundwater and landfill gas monitoring requirements, financial assurance requirements, and closure and post-closure care requirements. These requirements include composite liner systems for both the landfill base and cap, installation of leachate collection and treatment systems, and installation and monitoring of both groundwater and gas wells, to just name a few. The implementation of these Subtitle D regulations affected existing as well as lateral expansions of municipal solid waste landfills that received waste on or after October 9th of 1993. The EPA essentially gave existing landfills, as we had at that time, the directive to come into compliance with these regulations or discontinue accepting waste, applying a final soil cover, and basically closing. Moscow, like many other smaller municipalities at the time, chose to close their municipal solid waste landfill because of the costs involved to become compliant with Subtitle D, and based on the relatively small amount of waste tonnage that we were landfilling, made it cost prohibitive to operate and maintain an MSW landfill to those stringent standards and requirements. The city made the decision in 1993 to begin exporting its MSW to a regional landfill that was Subtitle D compliant. This remains the most cost-effective, viable, and efficient option for Moscow's waste now and for the foreseeable future. The original 1993 contract was awarded to Waste Management, which had anticipated opening a new regional landfill 74 miles from Moscow in Adams County, Washington, and Waste Management had bid the Moscow project based on that premise. The Adams County Regional Landfill did not come to fruition, which obligated Waste Management to haul Moscow's waste much further than anticipated to their Columbia Ridge Regional Landfill in Arlington, Oregon, which was 224 miles from Moscow. Moscow has been fortunate over the years since to pay transportation and disposal rates based on a 148-mile round trip rather than the actual 448-mile round trip. Empire Disposal of Colfax, Washington was the original subcontractor providing hauling services for Waste Management on the Moscow project. Empire Disposal was later acquired by Waste Connections, which inherited the subcontract haul through that acquisition. Waste Management, with the City of Moscow approval, assigned the Moscow Transportation and Disposal contract to Waste Connections in 2009. Waste Connections owns Finley Butte's regional landfill in Boardman, Oregon. Hauling Moscow waste to their own landfill in Boardman reduced the round trip by approximately 40 miles. Waste Connections also put further cost-cutting measures in place by switching to 53-foot aluminum chip trailers, which were capable of hauling 23% additional volume per load, which reduced the number and frequency of loads that were necessary. Last year, Waste Connections was approached by staff about extending our current transportation and disposal contract under the existing terms, but they insisted that any extension be tied to a fuel peg or a fuel surcharge escalator. Under that scenario, Moscow would be put into a vulnerable position due to the uncertainty of fluctuating fuel costs. Having a final 5-year option remaining on our existing contract as leverage, staff issued a request for proposal to provide solid waste transportation and disposal services as an opportunity to competitively test the market for a longer-term contract. 2 proposals were received and evaluated by a committee consisting of City Supervisor Gary Reedner, City Attorney Mia Valls, myself, Latah County Solid Waste Coordinator Amanda Bashaw, and Whitman County Solid Waste Director David Nails. The committee unanimously rated the proposal from Finley Buttes Limited Partnership, a subsidiary of Waste Connections and current contractor for the City of Moscow, as the most favorable proposal. General terms of the proposal include a cost of service of $51.75 per ton, an increase of approximately $1.20 to $1.30 per ton over existing rates beginning October 1st, 2018. This is a very favorable rate and is not tied to fuel cost escalators. Annual adjustments will be based on 80% of the fluctuation of the consumer price index. And the initial term would be for 7 years with 2 additional 5-year options. These term options allow the city flexibility to pursue other potential future opportunities. The proposal provides potentially 12 additional years of service over the existing contract and positions Moscow comfortably into the future with one of the most favorable waste transportation and disposal rates in the Pacific Northwest for municipalities that long haul their waste. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
That was quite a dissertation on a garbage Tim. I appreciate it. We all go to Catherine here.
Tim, I thought I wrote down the man's name that came up from.
Dean
Large.
Dean Large, yeah. And he was really helpful, and when he came to the table and we asked him questions, and he talked about that left to fill, they had 200 more years, for that fill site of 510 acres. And then he talked about Dietrich Trucking.
Mm-hmm.
And it said 26 tons per load. And I was trying to remember what that was.
When Waste Management had the contract from 93 until 2009, they used a different container, and they're basically a seagoing container that sits on a chassis. And with those steel containers, we were averaging about between 24 and 26 tons per load. With these new aluminum trailers, they're now able to legally haul 32.5 tons, which drops the number of loads necessary and the frequency.
Right, okay, that's why I took that down. I was just trying to remember. And then he did talk about within their area that the air and groundwater is protected. Can you just talk a little bit more about that?
They do have a Subtitle D landfill, which has a composite poly liner on the base. They're required to, when they cap the landfill, to also put a poly liner over the top. They have leachate collection systems, so any water that leaches down through the garbage is trapped and taken and treated at a holding pond on site. And then they also extract the gas off the landfill, and it's piped down to another facility that's approximately a mile from the landfill. And they have 3 large Caterpillar generators, or motors that power generators, and they run off this gas that they bring off the landfill. And then within that facility, they've got a cooling system. It's like an encapsulated water system that runs through these engines to cool them, and as that water heats up, they send it over to an adjacent onion drying company.
Yeah.
And they send a lot of the electricity generated to the grid as well, but it's kind of a closed loop cooling and heating system that's just perpetual. It's really a neat tour if you ever get a chance. I know I took Gary down there about 5 or 6 years ago, and we toured that, and it's pretty impressive.
Yeah.
Highlight of my year.
Maybe we can put a video up.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for adding that. I just thought it was really helpful, all the information that came out of that committee meeting.
A lot of those larger regional landfills are extracting the gas and doing the same thing, so it's becoming pretty popular to do rather than just venting that gas or flaring it and not using it as an energy source.
Yeah, it's a resource.
Okay.
Your Honor, if I may.
Gary?
Just for a couple of seconds. As you know, we're proceeding with the sanitation strategic plan, which has a couple of elements to it. One was to look at all of the assets and operations of the sanitation system, particularly, and driven a little bit by the relocation of the recycling center in light of single stream recycling and the other things going on. But one of the things that Tim's done very well over the past several years is, you recall last year when there was a renegotiation of our sanitation franchise, extending that franchise to 2035. The other element of that's the services provided by Latah Sanitation. The other piece of it, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to proceed with the strategic plan as well, was to see if we could match that with the transportation and disposal aspect. So we've now got our local collection services, inert demolition services, recycling services. Now this also allows us to make long-range plans for the next 17 years, as Tim said, a 7-year and then 2 10-year extensions, which allow both the sanitation franchise, solid waste franchise, and the long haul and disposal contract will come due at the same time, with an element of being able to keep the options open if there is a better way to dispose of our municipal solid waste with a local landfill, some of those things. As Tim and I have talked about, we will give a much broader overview of the system, because there is a lot of work that has gone into making the decision to continue with long haul and disposal. Tim's been a member of a regional solid waste advisory commission that has looked at local landfills. We looked at rail. We looked at maybe going with a landfill like the Asotin County landfill. None of those options bore any fruit. So this is really a good deal. The team that looked over the proposals, I think, did a very good job. Republic Waste Systems and Finley Buttes had really good proposals, but what put Finley Buttes on top, I believe, Tim can correct me, but because of our experience with them, we've gotten great service out of them, and they were priced a lot better, including the escalator that we utilize to adjust the price in succeeding years. So all of those things together really is a great plan. The other element that this really speaks to is in the sanitation strategic plan. As we're looking at all the other elements of the sanitation system, this is one that we thought, if there was a possibility of looking at it and getting alternatives before the council prior to exercising that last 5-year extension of the current sanitation contract, in other words, taking that, which is still a good price, that next 5 years and parlaying that into a longer contract, I thought it was excellently done. Certainly appreciative of Finley Buttes' proposal, and just wanted to compliment Tim for all the work he's done on this. If the council approves this, then the work just starts for Tim and Mia and myself. There's a pretty extensive contract that goes along with this that we initially negotiated in 1993 that will have to be updated. Tim's already taken some steps on that. So if you approve this, you're approving the selection of Finley Buttes and authorizing staff to enter into negotiation with them to get a contract signed and then move forward into the next phase.
Brandy had a question.
Well, yeah, and it's just something I didn't catch the first time I read through the agenda, but it was reviewed and recommended for approval by the Public Works Finance Committee on 4/9, not 3/9. I was like, was it really that long ago? I feel like we just did this.
It was just a week ago.
Yeah.
Fun on the council.
Very good catch, Brandy.
But no questions.
Okay. All
You
right.
answered them very well at that prior meeting. Thank you.
Your Honor, I move that we approve the Finley Buttes Limited Partnership proposal to provide solid waste transportation and disposal services, and we direct staff to negotiate an agreement.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion by Gina and a second by Brandy to approve the Finley Buttes Limited Partnership proposal to provide solid waste transportation and disposal services and direct staff to negotiate an agreement. I'll start to roll with Ann.
Aye.
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 Great. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.